Imagine a vehicle that looked more like a giant beetle than a car. The stout scarab, often called the first minivan, had a rounded, insect-like body with no hood, and a living room interior complete with swivel chairs. It was supposed to be the car of the future, but to most people it looked like something that crawled out of a sci-fi comic. It was expensive, slow, and very few were made. Today, it's remembered less as a success and more as proof that sometimes design ideas belong in the sketchbook, not on the highway. This prototype came with a huge wraparound bubble windshield and a red and white space-age body. But the wildest part? Instead of a rear-view mirror, it had a built-in camera pointing backward, connected to a screen on the dashboard. In the 1950s, this was revolutionary, but the screen was tiny, fuzzy, and almost useless. Drivers who tested it said they felt like they were flying blind. Buick scrapped the idea, though decades later, backup cameras became standard. The Centurion proves that sometimes an idea can be brilliant, just 40 years too early. 3 wheels. Yes, you heard that right, 1 wheel in front, 2 in the back. The Davis Divan looked like a strange spaceship that landed in a car dealership. Its selling point was that it could seat 4 people across one giant sofa-like bench. But with its odd balance and questionable handling, drivers quickly realized it wasn't exactly safe. Fewer than 20 were built, and the company collapsed amid lawsuits. Today, it's a quirky museum piece, remembered more for its courtroom drama than its road performance. In the atomic age, Ford asked a wild question. What if cars ran on nuclear power? The Ford Nucleon was a scale model showing a car with a small nuclear reactor in the trunk. The idea was you could drive hundreds of thousands of miles without refueling. But there was a tiny problem. No one wanted a personal reactor exploding behind them in a fender bender. The Nucleon never left the model stage, but it remains one of the most ridiculous and terrifying car ideas America ever dreamed up. Half car, half boat, the Amphicar promised freedom on land and water. In reality, it was slow on the road, slower in the water, and leaked like a bad canoe. Advertisements showed families happily driving straight into lakes, but owners quickly realized they needed towels to stay dry. President Lyndon B. Johnson famously loved pranking his guests by pretending the brakes failed and plunging into his ranch's lake in one. Fun? Sure. Practical? Not at all. When Ferrari sent its radical modulo prototype to American shows, car fans didn't know what to think. The modulo looked like a UFO on wheels, flat as a pancake, with a roof that slid forward so you could crawl inside. It was futuristic, wild, and completely impractical. You couldn't see out the back, you couldn't get in gracefully, and the clearance was so low it scraped on even the smallest bumps. It looked amazing on a rotating platform at auto shows, but on real streets? Forget it. Designed by a priest who wanted to make the safest car in the world, the Aurora was hideous. It had a giant, swollen fiberglass body with bubble windows and an awkward, lumpy shape. Inside, it was filled with padded surfaces and seat belts, but nobody cared because the thing looked like a melted marshmallow on wheels. Worse, it broke down on its very first test drive to the auto show. Only one was ever built, and it now sits as a cautionary tale that good intentions don't always lead to good design. Chrysler kept trying to design a dream car in the 1950s, and the Falcon 3 was one of the oddest. Its bubble top, swooping fins, and oversized chrome made it look more like a carnival ride than a car. It had airplane-style switches and controls that confused even trained drivers. It was shiny, loud, and completely unfit for daily driving. Chrysler paraded it around as a vision of tomorrow, but tomorrow never wanted it. The Dale was hyped as a revolutionary three-wheeled car that would save fuel during the oil crisis. The company behind it promised amazing gas mileage and futuristic looks. But here's the catch. Most of it was a scam. The prototype barely worked, and the founder was later revealed to have faked much of the company's progress. The Dale became one of America's most notorious automotive frauds, with its plastic body panels cracking and its engineering falling apart. It wasn't just ridiculous, it was criminal. In the mid-1930s, America's roads were filled with boxy sedans that looked like rolling bricks. Chrysler thought it could change everything with the airflow. Its engineers had been experimenting with airplane wind tunnels, and they realized most cars of the day were horribly inefficient. The airflow was their bold answer, a rounded, streamlined body with integrated headlights, a sloping nose, and a futuristic interior. On paper, it was brilliant. In reality, it was a disaster. The car's unusual shape terrified traditional buyers, who said it looked like a refrigerator tipped on its side. The heavy steel frame made it sluggish, and the early models had quality issues that only made sales worse. Dealers struggled to convince anyone to buy one. The airflow is often praised today for its engineering. Many of its aerodynamic ideas influenced later designs, but at the time it was so out of step with consumer tastes that it nearly ruined Chrysler's reputation. Instead of being the car of the future, it became a warning. If you push too far ahead, the public might not follow. When Ford unveiled the X100, it wasn't trying to sell a car, it was trying to sell the future. This concept was essentially a laboratory on wheels. Engineers crammed in more than 50 experimental features, each one meant to dazzle the public. Inside, you could find a tiny built-in television set, a refrigerated compartment for drinks, and even a system that supposedly cleaned smog from the air as you drove. The steering wheel looked like a control yoke from a jet fighter, and the dashboard had so many switches that even test drivers had no idea what half of them did. Some gadgets were clever, like rain sensors that automatically adjusted the wipers, but most were impractical or unfinished. The car was too heavy, too complex, and far too fragile for real production. Still, it did its job. The X100 drew huge crowds at auto shows and left people buzzing about what might be possible one day. And in a way, Ford wasn't completely wrong. Many of its crazy ideas, like air conditioning, automatic sensors, and onboard screens, would eventually become standard. The X100 may have been ridiculous at the time, but it also gave a glimpse of the technology that drivers take for granted today. By the mid-1950s, Packard was desperate. Once one of America's most prestigious automakers, the company was rapidly losing ground to Cadillac and Lincoln. To prove it still had vision, Packard unveiled the Predictor concept. At first glance, it looked like something out of the Jetsons, a shiny, futuristic coupe with wild chrome accents and experimental features. The roof panels lifted electronically to let in air and light. The seats were padded in sleek white vinyl, and the doors swung open in unusual ways. Most dramatic of all was the push-button transmission, a panel of buttons on the dash instead of a gear shift. It sounded impressive, but in practice, the buttons jammed constantly, and the electrical system was unreliable. The Predictor wowed crowds at auto shows, but behind the scenes, it highlighted how far Packard had drifted from reality. The company spent a fortune promoting the car, but had no resources to bring it to production. Within 2 years, Packard collapsed entirely. Today, the Predictor survives as both a curiosity and a cautionary tale, a flashy last gasp from a once great automaker. In 1962, Seattle hosted the World's Fair, a showcase of futuristic technology. Ford used the opportunity to dream up the most outlandish concept car it had ever built, the Seattle-ite Dextiwens. With 6 wheels, 4 tiny ones in the front and 2 oversized ones in the rear. The car looked more like a lunar rover than a family sedan. Ford claimed it would someday run on nuclear power, offering virtually unlimited range. It was also supposed to feature a fully computerized navigation system, interchangeable body modules, and voice-activated controls. To visitors at the fair, it was dazzling, more science fiction than science. But of course, none of it was remotely feasible in 1963. The Seattle-ite never came close to production, and Ford never even built a drivable prototype. It existed only as a futuristic shell displayed under bright lights. Still, it reflected the optimism of the space age, when people believed technology could solve everything. Ridiculous? Yes. But it captured the wild dreams of an era when the future seemed only a decade away. While the production Daytona became a racing legend, the early prototypes looked absolutely ridiculous. Engineers tested it with an enormous needle-like nose cone and a skyscraper-sized rear wing. Parked next to normal cars, it looked like a parody. People joked that the nose could spear through traffic jams. As strange as it looked, the aerodynamics worked. On the racetrack, the Daytona dominated. But as a streetcar prototype, it was laughed at until NASCAR wins made it famous. Proof that ridiculous can sometimes become revolutionary. During the early 1940s, Chrysler unveiled something that looked more like a streamlined submarine than a car, the Thunderbolt. Its name promised power, but what really drew attention was its strange, fully enclosed body. The fenders were molded into the shape of the car. The roof was a hard metal shell, and the entire design screamed futuristic experiment. The real party trick? The Thunderbolt had the very first fully retractable metal roof. At the push of a button, the roof slid back into the trunk, turning the odd coupe into a convertible. Sounds cool, right? But in practice, the roof was clunky, heavy, and prone to jamming. The sealed body design also left drivers with terrible visibility, and the automatic features often failed. Only 5 Thunderbolts were ever built, mostly for touring auto shows. They were expensive curiosities that no dealer could sell in wartime America. Today, they're prized by collectors, but in their day, they were impractical, overcomplicated machines that proved futuristic ideas sometimes need decades before they really work.